We left off at the third house of Congress for lobbyists, so I just wanted to kind of finish off our notes for today, and that's the regulation of lobbying. And so we're gonna talk about what that is and what that led to. So, 1946, the Federal Regulation of Lobbying Act required registration and disclosure, but was full of loopholes. One of the loopholes was you're only a part-time lobbyist. Another thing for the disclosure is, one, you had to register with the federal government. You had to tell them who hired you, how much you made, and who were you going after. And a way around all this stuff was the lobbyists would just say they're lawyers. But another thing that this did not cover is the 1946 law did not cover the executive branch. And so that was a big loophole right there, that the 1946 thing did not cover the executive branch. So then after that, all those loopholes and disclosure things and the way the lobbyists got around it, and it also did not regulate how much money they could spend, or did not tell people how much money they spent on things. So the Lobbying Act of 1985 tightened up registration and disclosure requirements, but this was only for Washington, D.C. So underneath that, part-time lobbyists now must register, because before that was part of the loophole. You didn't have to register. So now, and the executive branch now is covered. So in this 1995 Act, part-time lobbyists must register, and the executive branch is now covered from the lobbyists. And the lobbyists from foreign nations were also now covered, like OPEC and the auto industry. So what this does is covers the executive branch. This also covers part-time lobbyists and covers lobbyists from foreign nations with that one. Nowadays, we have so many restrictions on lobbyists, like it says on the next thing, that they barely have access or can do anything anymore because of all the restrictions that have been put in place against the lobbyists. So the restrictions on the gifts, meals, and expense paid travel that members from Congress receive is basically almost nothing. And one thing on here is former agency employees must wait a year before lobbying that agency. And what is important here is they're trying to limit, write it in here, put it in bold, the revolving door. They're trying to limit the revolving door. And the revolving door meaning you're working in Congress, you're a politician, you get something passed for a certain group, and then you go work for that group a year later. So there'll be that revolving door there. You try to limit this. Newt Gingrich was big on this when he was the chairman of the House in the 90s. He was big on trying to stop that. The case for the lobbyists is they provide obviously good information for the government. They provide a means of participation for the people, like when you belong to an organization. They provide a means of representation on the basis of interest rather than geography. This is big right here, they are a linking mechanism between the people and government, a third house of government. So that term linking mechanism is what is important here, because these are things that link the people and government together. Lobbyists are one of those. They protect the First Amendment, and as Madison pointed out in Federalist 10, the remedy of curing the evils of factions by eliminating their cause is worse than the disease. Potential loss of liberty is worse than the abuse of the lobbyists. So remember, that's kind of important right there. Even though he warned against these factions do have a purpose, and they are helping us out. On the next part, the case against the lobbyists, Obviously, rich and powerful interests are overrepresented. Average and poor people are underrepresented. Again, like our politics are. By safeguarding liberty, equality is sacrificed. Single-issue lobbies, especially, contribute to political polarization, and lobbyists continue even further to diffusion of power, making it even more difficult for government to get things done. Iron triangle. And national interest is sacrificed for narrow interest. That's the polarizing issues, things that the lobbyists are fighting for. Think of hyperpluralism and what they're doing. Alrighty, so that'll be the end of our notes for the AP guys. And then we'll get into political action committees tomorrow. And we will then get into introduction to political parties. I know we kind of already talked about that, but we'll get back into that. Have a groovy night.